number 74, part 2. Un, deux, trois. Well, I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from. Oh, because this is from France.
Because of Rex Monde.
It's from France.
Which I knew meant what, Carol?
Wine is
King
good.
of the world.
Tell me that I was right. That's all I want you to say.
You
still
were right.
Thank you.
But you know what? I just ignored it because I didn't find it in my notes because I
Yeah,
couldn't
well,
read the
because
damn thing.
I'm a good translator.
You are.
All right. Let's leave this
Oh, wait,
Okay.
you didn't
good
turn it around.
tasting bottle, but awful label here, and let's move on to the book. And
Yes.
we can't though because it's Peggy's book and she's not here.
Okay.
No, now she's back.
Here we go.
Okay.
All right, so anyway, the book that I am reading, I can't show you that I was reading because it was a library book and I had to return it to the library. And the name of the book was The Reformatory, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. I already have 2 of my sisters reading it.
Oh.
The author of the book is Tananarive Due. Tanana is her first name, and her last name is Due, D-U-E. And the book is The Reformatory. All right, so it is actually the author actually received the American Book Award and the NAACP Images Award.
Do you know who published it?
I don't.
Okay.
I
You
don't. I
answered my
didn't look. I'm
question.
sorry,
That's okay.
publishers. I didn't look.
Just curious.
So the book is really about racism and injustice. So it's set in Jim Crow, Florida in 1950, and it's based on a real place, the Dossier, I think it's Arthur Dossier School for Boys, which was not a school. And that's a real place, and that's why I was a little late today, because I started looking into that place, and I went down the rabbit hole. Horrible. It's going to be a topic that I will cover in the future, sometimes in the future.
Okay.
So the book is around a 12-year-old boy named Robert Stevens Jr., and he's sent to Gracetown, which is the name of the school in the novel, because this is a novel.
Okay.
It's not a true story. He's sent to Gracetown School for Boys, and it's in Marianna, Florida,
Okay.
during Jim Crow. Okay, and he's sent there for a trivial offense. He kicked a white boy because the white boy was the son of a very powerful landowner in their town, and the white boy was he was being aggressive with Robert's sister Gloria, who was his older sister.
And they're black.
But yes, yeah, they're black.
Right.
And it was very inappropriate. Like, you know, that he was probably going to rape her.
Yeah.
You know, like he was coming on to her, and they were on a road, you know, walking home. So he kicked him, and then they called the sheriff. First of all, the kid's father, like, punched him in the face and almost broke his jaw. He was all screwed up. This is a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a big kid either. He was kind of small for his age. And then they called the sheriff, and the sheriff arrested him, and then they went to court, and the judge sent him to this reformatory for kicking this kid. And the father, one of the reasons why they did it, besides that they were all a bunch of racists there, this kid's father was an activist, and he was in that area, and he was trying to organize black people, and he was trying to change things in that town and expose injustices, and he had to pretty much run away, and he had to leave and go to Chicago because they were going to lynch him. So now his family, his 2 children are left, and the mother had died a few years before. She died of cancer, and the whole, the town, the police, the judges, they were all focused on these kids. They watched every move of that family because they figured that they could get the father. They want the father to come back so that they could probably kill him, you know. So there is the whole place when Robert, his name is Robbie, they call him Robbie until he gets there. He becomes Robert because he doesn't want to sound too childish, because you have to really be like almost a man to be there.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, you know, because people are going to beat you up all the time. And it's segregated. And I'm not saying that the white kids were treated much better. They had better circumstances. The white kids in the white part of the reformatory, they had a little better facility. They actually had a swimming pool, but they still got beaten up all the time too. And it's not by the other kids, it's by the staff. So it turns out that this school is haunted by haints. Remember when I did the ghost podcast a year ago?
Yes.
And we came up with all the different words for ghosts?
Right.
Well, haints was one of them, and they used that constantly in this
Oh.
book, I was glad to see. And the school is haunted by these ghosts of boys who were murdered there, who died there. Most of them were murdered. You know, they were beaten to death, or some of them were burned to death. It was a horrible, horrible place. So Robbie, ever since he was very little, was able to like see ghosts. Like he used to see his mom all the time. He was like you, Judy. You know, like he was very connected with the spirit world. So he's starting to see these ghosts, and he doesn't know if they're real or if they're ghosts. And the ghosts are trying to get him to help them, because they're all still imprisoned in that place.
Yes.
And they want to be free. They want to move on. So and everywhere he goes, he sees them. Like there was one point, and this really happened in the real place, that they set a building on fire with the kids in it and burned them to death. And like in this one place, like he could smell the smoke, he could hear the screaming, and he ends up making friends with this other kid named Redbone and this other boy named Blue, and they kind of like teach him the rules, like, you know, so that you actually survive this, and because they're always killing kids there, so he learns the rules and how to survive. But then the governor, that's what they call him, he's the administrator of the prison, it's not really a school. He starts realizing that Robbie can see the ghost, because he can too, and he wants the ghost out of there. So he starts using Robbie to tell him where the ghosts are, because they came up with this special stuff that they put out, and it attracts the ghosts, and then they can trap them, and then they destroy them. There's a whole big ghost thing. It's very, very interesting part of the book. I had never read anything like it before. But meanwhile, while all this is going on, because they have, it's just horrible, the beatings, you know, going in the shower, you know, boys are raped by the staff. They have a place called the Fun House, and if you do, like, Robbie ended up there because all he did was ask another kid, does anybody ever try to run away from here? That's all he said. And somebody overheard him, reported him. They brought him to the Fun House, where they beat you, and this really happened in the real place. They had a long leather strap, like a whip, but they put embedded metal into it, so that when they beat these children, like it would just rip their flesh off. And then they had another room, the shed they called it, and that was where the governor would rape them.
You know, it's funny you said the shed, because in that book I read The Enchanted. Remember the one that the place where they would rape was called the shed.
Wow.
As well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So meanwhile, his sister Gloria, who Robbie ended up in this place because he was trying to save her from being raped by this white kid, a very entitled family, she is trying everything that she can to get him out of that place. So she goes to the judge. Nobody takes her seriously. She's a black girl. Her father's an activist. They all hate the father. They just want him to come back so that they could kill him. And she ends up, she has like a white relative, because, you know, the whole slavery thing, who has money. And that woman gives her some money so that she could try to hire a lawyer. And she meets an NAACP lawyer who decides to help out what he can, if he can. But they weren't really very successful. So then instead they plot this escape. They're going to help him escape from the school. And I don't want to give too much away because it's very, very, very interesting things that happen there. And let's see, that's his sister. So they have to get out of Florida, and they have to get him out of there and get out of Florida because they're just always going to be targets. So then I started looking into the Arthur G. Dossier School for Boys, which this story was based on. The author's great uncle was actually in this reformatory. He did survive. He was one of the survivors.
Is it still in existence?
They closed it in 2011.
Wow.
Oh my
so
gosh.
It opened on January 1st, 1900, and they closed it in 2011. And it housed boys from the ages of 8 to 21.
Wait,
8 years old.
tell me when it opened again?
1900, January 1st,
Okay,
1900.
I'm gonna remember that. Okay.
Okay? And there's, I went on this website and these people who were survivors, they're white and they're black, and they tell these horrible stories that correlated with what I learned reading this novel, with the whippings, with the leather straps, with the metal embedded, and the rapings in the they called it, instead of the fun house, they called it the White House there, and the shed was something else there where the boys were raped. And what they would do when somebody tried to escape, and this was in the novel and also in real life, they were called the dog boys. And they were local men who had these dogs that tracked these kids. And most of the times the dogs killed the boys, as soon as they just let them attack them. So it was kind of, and sometimes before they killed them, the dog boys would sexually abuse them.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
Because
oh
it's
God,
about
it was
power.
kind of hard to read, but it was really a page turner. It was so well written, and you got so involved in these children's lives. It was, I really highly recommend reading it, even though it is a very disturbing story.
When did it come out?
Happened.
Do you know?
It came out last year in 2023.
I think I might have picked that up.
It's
That
coming
sounds
out
good.
in paperback, I think, in September. I
Yeah.
did look up. I forgot who the publisher was. Maybe it's Simon
I was just
Schuster.
curious because I
So,
have
yeah.
a book similar. I was just wondering if the same publisher.
Yeah. So what they were doing, the reason, and then what they would sentence a kid to like 6 months there, but then for any reason they would extend it, and the reason they did it is because these kids were working a sugarcane farm and they used them as slave labor.
Well, that's like in the Enchanted they talk about. They would be in there for a certain time, but if they were the favorites, meaning sexually too, then they would find any reason to keep them in longer so that they could be used sexually throughout the prison.
Yeah. So
how many wildflowers is
I'll give it 5 wildflowers. It really was a page turner, even though it was such a heartbreaking story and very disturbing. It was so well written.
Stories need to be told. Yeah.
Right.
And just Robbie's interaction with the ghosts, with the haints as he called them, and you get a little bit of their stories and what happens to them. It was really a very, very good book, and I highly recommend it.
How did you come across this book?
Yes.
I was listening to my favorite radio station, WNYC, and the author, I happened to catch the author being interviewed.
Awesome.
And I jotted it down, and then I went to the library, and they had it on the shelf. And it's coming out, I think, paperback in September.
Awesome. I'm going to keep an eye out.
Yeah.
It's called the Reformatory.
And
Due.
Tananarive
Due.
That's her first name.
Tananarive.
Yeah, it's Tananarive, and her last name is Due, Due. Okay?
Tananarive Due.
So what's the topic then?
Well, my next topic is going to be kind of a little tie-in. That's why I was asking you. It's dealing with a woman who I didn't know about. It's called Madame Restel.
So that's gonna
Okay.
be part 3 on
Okay.
number 74.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Come back.
You'll want to come back. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
Bye.